Welcome to the Unveiled Epic Echoes channel. Today, we're diving deep into an unexplored historical mystery. The morning fog lay thick over the Atlantic coastline like a breathing thing. Slow and deliberate. When the ship first appeared off the shores of New England in the early autumn of 1807, drifting without signal, without sound, its sails half-raised as if frozen mid-thought. And those who saw it from the rocky bluffs of Cape felt a quiet unease settle into their bones before they could even explain why. Because ships were meant to speak long before they arrived, through flags or bells or the simple geometry of human movement. Yet this one glided forward in perfect silence, a dark silhouette against the pearl-gray water, as if the sea itself were delivering it. Fishermen were the first to notice that nothing moved on deck. No shadows crossed the masts, no rope swung loose in the wind. And when the vessel finally grounded itself gently in the shallows, rocking once as though sighing, the gulls refused to land on it, circling wide and crying sharply as if warning one another away. Word traveled quickly into the nearby town, where dockworkers, shipwrights, and a handful of retired sailors gathered with a shared, unspoken memory of old tales told in taverns, stories of ghost ships whispered from one generation to the next, usually dismissed with laughter but never fully forgotten. And among them was Elias, a former maritime surveyor whose eyes had learned to read ships the way others read faces, noticing the small details that betrayed age, origin, and purpose. And as he stared through his spyglass, he felt a tightening in his chest, because the ship's design did not belong neatly to any one era. Its hull lines suggesting an older European style, while its fittings hinted at innovations not yet common in American waters. When a small boarding party finally rowed out under a sun that struggled weakly through the fog, the oars dipped into water so still it felt like oil, and the closer they came, the more wrong everything seemed, for the ship bore no name on its stern. Only the faint impression where one had been carved and later scraped away. And the wood itself was etched with symbols so weathered they appeared almost grown into the grain. Spirals and stars and shapes that echoed ancient maritime markings long abandoned. Climbing aboard was like stepping into a held breath, the deck clean yet uncared for. Ropes neatly coiled but stiff with salt, lanterns hanging unlit and empty. And below deck they found the galley stocked with dried food long past edible. Barrels of fresh water untouched, navigational charts spread open as if someone had just leaned away for a moment. And in the captain's quarters lay a leather-bound logbook whose pages crackled softly as Elias opened it, revealing careful handwriting that began in a familiar manner, recording winds and headings, until the language slowly shifted into something stranger, a mix of Latin, Old Portuguese, and symbols that did not belong to any known alphabet, describing not storms or illness, but whispers heard beneath the hull at night, lights moving under the waves, and a growing conviction among the crew that the ocean itself had begun to remember them. As the hours passed and the fog lifted, townspeople crowded the shore, watching as if the ship might suddenly awaken. And by evening, a decision was made to tow it into harbor for closer inspection, though many crossed themselves or murmured prayers as the lines were secured, because the absence of bodies was more frightening than their presence would have been. No signs of struggle, no blood, no evidence of abandonment, just a ship paused between intentions. Over the following days, scholars and clergy were invited, and one elderly historian named Hale recognized the symbols etched into the wood as variations of markings used by ancient Phoenician sailors. A civilization thought to have vanished from the seas nearly 2,000 years earlier. And this revelation cracked open a deeper mystery, because the logbook's earliest entries suggested a voyage that began not years ago but centuries, referencing stars no longer in the same positions and coastlines drawn as they existed before recorded changes. Elias became consumed by the puzzle, reading and rereading the log by candlelight, his dreams filling with images of a crew sailing westward, driven by a belief that the ocean held a living memory, that certain routes passed not only through space but through time, and that by following the old paths marked by forgotten constellations, one could cross into waters where the past breathed alongside the present. The final entries in the log described a calm night, the sea glowing faintly as if lit from below, voices rising from the deep speaking names with unbearable intimacy, promising safe passage and eternal remembrance. And then the writing stopped mid-sentence. The ink blotted as though the writer's hand had trembled or been pulled away. One night, long after the ship had been roped off and declared unsafe, Elias returned alone, compelled by a pull he could not explain. And as he stood on deck under a sky heavy with stars, he felt the ship respond. A subtle vibration like a distant heartbeat. And for a fleeting moment, he saw figures along the rails. Translucent and calm, their faces peaceful rather than afraid, gazing westward as if still mid-voyage. And in that instant, he understood that the crew had not vanished but arrived elsewhere, carried into a current of time older than history, leaving behind only the vessel as a marker. A message to those who might one day remember the old ways of listening to the sea. By morning, the ship was gone, the harbor empty save for gently lapping water and a few severed ropes floating like shed skins. And though officials insisted it must have broken free and sunk, those who had felt its presence knew better. And the logbook, found closed and dry on the dock, ended with a single new line written in a hand no one recognized, stating simply that the ocean keeps what it loves. Years later, Elias would tell the story softly to his, not as a warning but as a lullaby, a reminder that history is not always behind us. Sometimes it sails quietly into view, waits to be noticed, and then slips away again, leaving only the hush of waves and the comforting thought that some journeys are meant not to end, but to continue beyond our knowing. This mysterious journey ends here, but stay tuned for more untold stories in our next video. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any new stories. Thank you and see you again.